The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the DataView Show. This is episode number 16. I'm your host, Scott Hayes, a lifetime IBM champion and IBM Db2 Gold consultant. And today we have a super special, awesome guest, Keri Romanufa. Did I say that right? Keri Romanufa.
It's actually Romanoff, but it doesn't really matter.
Romanov. The A at the end is silent.
Yes.
As I should be more often. Keri Romanufa.
I wasn't going to say that.
How are you today, Keri?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm super fabulous. I'm having a very good time, and I'm really excited that you're with us today. Why don't you share with our audience something personal about yourself, a little hobby or something? What have you been doing during these work-at-home days?
So my summertime hobbies are probably gardening and sailing, but sailing, pretty well all the sailing clubs are closed right now because it's, a sport and is done with multiple people. And sort of I also have a hobby of woodworking. So furniture, gardening, boxes, landscaping, all that type of stuff. So if you follow me on Twitter, you occasionally see some of the things I build or eat.
Right, very cool. All right, let's move along on the show here. The required gibberish. The opinions expressed are that of Scott Hayes and the show guests and do not necessarily reflect that of IBM Corporation or the IBM community. DB2 is a registered trademark of IBM, which is also a registered trademark. We make no claims to any marks belonging to anyone. It's yours. We don't care. This event is being recorded. Replays will be publicly available. Let's all mind our manners. What else do we have? This is what we're going to do today. We're going to have Db2 11.5 updates with Keri. She'll take a break a little bit in. We'll share with you some news bits and other important information. We'll have a few polling questions for you, and we'll do thank yous at the end like we always do because we like thanking people. A lot of people always ask, will a handout be available? And the answer to that question is yes, a handout will be available. We'll make it available via the GoToWebinar tool during the last 5 minutes of Keri's presentation today. She didn't want anybody reading ahead, then you don't get the punchlines for the jokes and stuff. So that'll be available at the end of the show today. You'll be able to download that. You can also get the handout from our replay blog when that's published later today. Okay, let's move along then. Keri, we're going to make you the presenter. And I was wondering about your Twitter icon person here with the soccer and the wood. What's the story on your Twitter icon?
I believe the story is a few people in the IBM community said either I add an icon or they were creating one for me. And so I'm a big Lego fan, I'm a big soccer fan, and so that one seemed perfect.
Very nice.
And not to mention any names, but if you've seen some pictures of various, IBM champions floating around, it's better to have your own Lego icon.
That's right. That's right. I'm familiar with some of those people. Okay, I can see your screen. Looks like there's a PowerPoint waiting to be displayed.
Yep. And do you see full screen mode now?
I do, full screen mode. It's very beautiful with all those colors.
Yes, this is one of the new IBM templates, and I actually really like it because I have snowboard jackets that match this in the bright black and other colors.
Super awesome. Very colorful.
Perfect. I'm going to try to minimize the control panel.
Yeah,
And
that
I'll get
little,
started now.
that white arrow and the orange box, that'll get that out of your way for you. And I think there's a typo in your email address on this slide. Is that deliberate?
Yeah, that's gonna drop my email. Let me I'll fix that and I'll resend you the deck. But yes, there should be an eye on the Keri@ca.ibm.com.
Yeah, okay, no worries.
Perfect.
I didn't know if you're trying to stay stealth or not.
Maybe, yeah, that's the plan. But I'll get started. And so my plan today is to talk about both what has already shipped in DB2 11.5 and also some things that are coming first half and probably early second half. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm an STSM and I'm the chief architect for DB2. I've worked at IBM for, let's see, what is it, 20, in 2 weeks it will be my 28th anniversary of working at IBM. And all of that has been on the DB2 family. I actually spent the first couple of years on the VM and VSE product for DB2.
That
and
is
then moved over
fabulous.
to distribution.
Congratulations.
So thank you. So first of all, thanks to Scott to inviting me to the DataView Show, and I'll get going with the presentation. So as usual with any presentation, there's 2 pages of disclaimers. The quick summary of these are things are subject to change, especially as I start to talk about the things that haven't shipped yet. They are definitely, subject to some change. And the other thing is, any performance numbers and all of that are, internal lab results, and customer results may vary. And feel free to, when you get the hard copy or the soft copy, to read the full descriptions. So the agenda today is we kind of have 3 areas. One is I'm going to talk about some basics. So how does the 11.5 numbering work? Talk about deployment options, and then talk about the 11.5 overview, which will be talking about the whole DB2 family built on the Common SQL engine. Talk about what's in 11.5 GA, which came out last June, and also what's coming, like I said, first half and probably early second half, followed by a deep dive into, a top 10 items that are coming in the first half of this year. Scott, if there's questions on the line, I assume you'll interrupt and ask them. So for the basics, what's up with the numbering? So anybody who's used 10.5, we had one numbering system there. We actually adjusted the numbering system in 11.1, and we have actually made minor adjustments, and I will actually say improvements to it for 11.5. So the key points are 11.5, much like 11.1, has a continuous delivery model. So that means, unlike, say, 10.5, where we shipped and we expected all of the content to be in GA, and then, maybe there was a little bit of extra content. For 11.1 and 11.5, from the start, we have said there will be multiple mod packs after GA, all of which have significant content. So it's much less of a big gulp strategy and much more of a, you'll get continual development and improvements on the level you're on. So that is very much the same as 11.1. If what we're shipping has new function in it, we're going to call it a mod pack. We're going to increment the mod level, which is, if you look at the 11.5, it's the next digit after that. But what is new compared to 11.1 is if we increment the mod level, we are going to reset the fixed pack level to 0. And that just gives us some more room, and you'll see below it actually allows us to identify things better. So for example, 11.5 GA is 11.5.0.0, and we have actually already shipped the mod packs for 11.5.1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. If something is fixes only, then we're going to increment just the fixed pack level. And this is also the same as 11.1, and between resetting above and then doing the increment of the fixed pack level, this allows us to better identify what in 11.1 was called iFixes and what in 11.5 will just be called fixed packs, because these fix only things, you'll see a number jump where the fixed pack level jumps. So now that you have a basic understanding of the numbering and a reminder of the continuous delivery model, the next thing is, how can you install DB2? So DB2 and the DB2 family generally has two deployment options or install options available. The first one is containerized, and the second one is the multi-platform install that probably, a large percentage you are used to. For containerized installs, it is a Red Hat OpenShift-based container. This container supports both single node and also HADR configs, but they're a single node, and DPF MPP. There is not yet a container that supports PureScale. These ship approximately every 2 to 3 months, and this is subject to change because we're trying to align many of the family products. And currently, these almost always have new function. So, they are almost always mod packs. So if you look at what's already shipped, we've had 11.5.1, 11.5.2.0, and 11.5.3.0. And these are already available if you're running containerized. In addition, these are the levels that we're using to sync across the whole DB2 family. Then the other install option is what I call multi-platform installs. And this is probably, like I said, what most of you are used to and using today, where it supports all DB2 platforms, whether it's Linux, AIX, Windows, and on Linux on all the platforms we support. And it also supports all configurations, single node, DPF, and PureScale. These mod packs are generally 6 to 12 months apart. And between mod packs, there may be fix-only fix packs. And these are very similar to the concept of the 11.1i fixes, but there's two key differences. First of all, they will contain all the APARs, not just a subset. So in 11.1, we sort of handpicked, some higher priority or maybe more pervasive fixes to put in, versus the plan here is to pull them all in. And as I said, this will actually bump up the fix pack field of the version number. This will make it much more easier to recognize and get rid of the ABC that was confusing people in 11.1.
Miss Keri?
Yep.
There's a question from Fred in our audience, and he would like to know, when will the first fix pack for traditional non-containerized DB2 11.5 be released?
You're spoiling the whole excitement of the rest of my presentation. So the plan is by the end of first half, which, as you all know, usually means in the last week or two of the first half, so end of June.
And somebody would like to know about Solaris. Is Solaris support going to continue?
No. Solaris was dropped in 11.1, briefly brought back, and it is not being continued for 11.5.
Okay. That covers a couple of questions for now.
Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to try to show what I was just describing in pictures, and feel free to send me feedback to my real email address about this one, because we've been trying to have it be as clear as possible. But so for the DB2 lifecycle for 11.5, as I described, you have two different install paths to choose from. The blue is the multi-platform install path, where you get both mod packs and fix packs, and the red is the containerized install path, right? These are all built off the exact same code base. They're just, what is available and what is in them. So anything in purple is actually shared on both paths. So if you look at today, we shipped 11.5.0.0, which is GA. And that was the starting point for both code paths. Since then, we have shipped 11.5.1.0, 11.5.2.0, and actually, I think it was just last week, we shipped 11.5.3.0, all of which are the container install path only, and they include fixes and function. As I talked about, we plan to have the first, multi-platform install coming out at the end of June. And that is going to basically resync back up the two paths. And that will, likely be called 11.5.4, but here I just call it .n. And at that point, both of them will be onto an identical code base and an identical level. Then after that, they will split apart again. And in the fixes only stream, you will start to be 11.5.n.1 to say that there's fixes, and say 11.5.n.2 that there's fixes. Whereas the bottom path, you're going to see the mod pack numbers increase. And then at some point, likely, roughly the end of the year, they will go back together, right? Where you will have a mod pack for both streams with new function and fixes for both streams. And then that pattern will repeat going forward for however long that 11.5 is the continuous delivery stream. And then at some point, much like 11.1, it will probably become a fixed pack only stream, and there will be a new release that is our ongoing delivery stream. So I just paused for a second to see if there's any questions that Scott's going to jump in with before I go to the next topic.
I'm going to toss you a couple of quickies. Sri would like to know, we're planning on upgrading to 11.5 from 10.5.8, which has been really stable and awesome. It never crashes. Thank you very much. He says, which 11.5.x.x version do you suggest for going to upgrade to 11.5? And if I was a mind reader, you'd probably say the latest, but your chance to answer.
Oh, I'll say the latest. Whether you choose between the containerized path or the multi-platform path is somewhat dependent on, what platform you're looking at. If you can run on Red Hat OpenShift, it is the, we bought the company. So it is definitely a recommended path, but, for anybody on traditional installs, or if you want AIX or other platforms, that's your path to choose. And then, if you're asking today, right, and, you're just starting to set up the hardware, I would definitely have a plan to pick up the, June release as soon as it's available.
Going to toss just a couple more at you. The questions are coming in fast and furious now, but we're not going to overlook.
Yep.
How many fix packs expected in each quarter or year? Matthias would like to know.
We've never had a solid, number for that. So if we're talking, when I talked about the containerized, we're looking at every 2 to 3 months. So, if you say each quarter, that's 1, potentially 2. If you look at the top path, the bigger drops are, every 6-ish months, sometimes further apart. So, those would be a couple a year. And then, if you look at the iFixes, maybe 1 or 2, or not but what the fix packs, so what historically are iFixes, again, 1 or 2 in between those larger drops. Right. And like I said, all of those numbers are very subject to change, but that's roughly what we did in 11.1 and are looking at doing going forward.
Very good. Luke asked an intriguing question.
And I will say that when things become no longer the continuous delivery model, the fixed packs tend to move further out too.
All right. Luke would like to know if there's any plans on dropping the W from LUW. Does Windows have a future in the life of DB2?
So I believe Windows has a future, and I mean, we have many customers on it, but it's all of that type of stuff is dependent on how things go in the future, and percentage of customers on things, and when people are no longer setting it up. But customers are still buying and setting up Windows, right? If you look at the cloud and you look at Red Hat OpenShift, where we are 5 years from now, I think there will be a lot more on OpenShift, but that's a educated guess.
All right.
So right now there are no plans to dropping any other levels. So.
All right. Why don't you continue with your presentation?
Okay. So next I'll talk about an overview. So I mentioned briefly about, our sort of division is the hybrid data management area, and we're under data and AI. And, one of our key things is using the common SQL engine, which is at the heart of DB2, to be the heart of, a large number of other products. So on the cloud side, you have DB2 Warehouse on Cloud. You have DB2 on cloud, which is transactional. We have a hosted version, plus we have the big SQL hosted. Obviously, you can see that I, here I'm focusing more on, the core DB2, what people call on-prem, and what will be the DB2 cartridge on Cloud Pak for data. But most of what we're doing here is applicable to all of these form factors. And in addition, some of the things that we're pulling and externalizing in DB2 today have also been in DB2 Warehouse, sometimes for a couple of years, because it's all based on the same common engine. So talking about the 11.5 GA highlights, if we kind of look at the core areas we're focusing on, one was cognitive and emerging technologies. And in those areas, we did tech previews for both the Hyperledger blockchain, so the ability to use Federation to access both the blockchain and the state database, and also pulling in machine learning language into our own optimizer as a technology preview to improve cardinality estimates, which inherently improves the plans you can select. We had a Docker container for people who wanted, an easy install and to start down the containerization path. For application development, we added a Go language driver. We added an IDE for Visual Studio Code, and we also added a tool called the Augmented Data Explorer, which is technically separate from DB2, but you can connect to DB2 and be able to do natural language queries. And also a lot of graph type visualization data as you're looking through, connecting to and going through DB2 databases. There was a large amount of enhancements to Blue, or what we call columnar tables. There was next generation for bulk inserting for columnar tables through vectorized insert and reduced undo logging. Huge speed ups for Blue performance. And going forward, we're actually trying to push this as overload, because if you look at it, the performance and the logging is actually incredibly fast. Improvements to the update and delete performance, the ability to automatically create your dictionaries online and in a much faster vectorized format. The ability to, in Blue, when you're inserting data into a table and it's a brand new table, you don't have a dictionary yet because you don't know what the data looks like to be able to create your dictionary. So there's a delay in actually creating the dictionary. So the first chunk of data goes in uncompressed, and then that data is used to figure out what the best compression dictionary is. And then the remainder of the data is compressed based on that dictionary. And this meant that some amount of the front matter of the table is uncompressed. And as of 11.5 GA, we have something called the reorg recompress. It's automatic. It happens magically under the covers for you, where we will take that front part of the table and actually recompress it. And because it's smaller, we'll actually free up any space that comes out of recompressing that front. I already mentioned vectorized ADC. It's just a faster way of creating the dictionary. We added support for the lob type in columnar tables. And there's a huge number of columnar query performance enhancements. So many of your columnar queries will run much faster in 11.5 than it did in 10.5. Under availability, advanced log space management, there was a tech preview for that support. Parallel logging when using mirrored logs within the DB2 engine. Pure scale, I'll skip some of these, but there was a lot of focus on cross-member use of certain data like free space management, and being able to use the data for currently committed. We sped up things like load for range partition tables, and we also, one of the things that happened is we shipped both the OLIC and the extent reclaim in 10.5, but they were off by default. They are now on and enabled by default in 11.5 GA. Again, tons of core engine enhancements. So external table support. So this is the ability to either inline or define a table actually in the catalogs that essentially point to a CSV file or an input file from disk, and then do very fast loads or even querying out of that table. 4K sector support for disks. You know, compatibility things like drop and create table if exists to be compatible with other vendors. Some Oracle packages and libraries, and also a bunch of enhancements to WLM. So, you know, these two should be overviews compared to, you know, things I probably presented on this show and other shows sometime last year. So now we'll talk about the 11.5 first half roadmap highlights. And the first thing I'll say is we keep a, you know, in-flight roadmap at the link I have before. So, you know, anybody can go there anytime and see what we have. Usually it's sort of the 6 month to 1 year out plans that we have up there. Right now, I think we have the first half plans, and we're just, you know, getting to the point where we're dropping in the second half plans in shortly. Some of the key highlights for what will be coming is a graph database. So I won't talk about this one in detail in my deck today, but it's check preview for 11.5.4. And what it allows you to do is take a, you know, your current DB2 relational database, either run a tool that automatically tries to infer what the relationships are, or allows you to set up the relationships by hand, and then run gremlin queries against those defined relationships, which will automatically, you know, map to the DB2 tables and give you your graph results. So the benefits of this is twofold. One is you don't need to move data elsewhere. You're really defining it on top of your current data, so you don't have to move it. And you also get the benefits of, you know, real-time access to your data. And the other benefit is, especially for large queries, it very much outperforms many of the graph-specific databases we've tested it against. As I said, you know, the DB2 container focuses on Red Hat OpenShift. Application development, you know, a lot of new drivers, you know, updated levels for most of the IDEs. A key one is DB2 REST APIs, so that is coming, and also Python UDFs. Blue and MPP enhancements, automatic indelt resolution for DPF, lots of WLM enhancements that will be, I'll talk about it later, but coming for workload equal analytics. Trickle feed performance improvements. So, you know, I talked about 11.5 GA having performance improvements when you were doing bulk inserts. So, you know, hundreds and thousands of rows coming at the same time. This is improvements when, you know, you're doing a few rows per commit. Lots of enhancements and performance for bar chart compression. Let's see which one of these. Lots for memory stability, so the ability to have DB2 use less memory for specific operations, especially if you have a lot of bar chars and, you know, long bar chars that are, you know, wide, but they actually probably in general contain very little data. It will be big improvements to less memory usage. For blue tables, the ability to have rollback support on truncate. And I mentioned we added lob support, but as of you know, the first half, the goal will be able to actually be able to do an add column to add the lobs as opposed to just supporting it in new tables. Other key areas, availability, it's always a area we focus on. So we're looking at, in addition, you know, right now, if you're running our automated HADR, many of our customers run TSA. We're looking at adding Pacemaker as a tech preview in the first half of this year. Having advanced log space management move from tech preview to GA. Core engine, optimizer version control. I'll talk about this one more. Much faster database activation. I'll show some numbers from that. Query and SQL enhancements for alias in a where clause and nested support with. Under security, I'll go into detail on the authentication caching, but another one that I will mention is we're doing sort of the first drop of a single system sign-on where we're going to support JWT tokens. And this means between DB2 Federation, the client, and actually Watson Studio, you will be able to, at the higher levels, grab a JWT token, pass it through the stack, and use that within DB2. Under Cognitive Emerging, ML Optimizer, there will be a second version of the tech preview. We have added spatial analytics, which allow you to do spatial on-columnar data. And under Federation, there will be improved parallelism, and they've actually added a very, very large number of JDBC connectors to widen the scope of where you can grab your data from. I'm going to make one comment on this because you'll see that I put 2 stars specifically for the 2 PureScale items. I was asked the question of when will the first, fixed pack mod pack for the 11.5 stream come, and I said the first half of this year, and that is a true statement with the exception of PureScale. And I'm going to explain why. And when we do all our failure testing for non-PureScale, we have historically found that whether you do a soft system shutdown or a hard system shutdown, it doesn't make a difference to the error conditions we're going to drive. And because of that, now that nobody on our team is actually allowed to be in the lab, we can still do 100% of our testing that is required to ship the 11.5 on non-PureScale, and still have that completed by the first half of this year. But we have historically found that in PureScale, just probably because, obviously because of the interconnectivity between machines and CFs and, the way the cluster works, that if we do only software type failures, there are sometimes timing scenarios in hardware type failures that just cause different behaviors. And because of that, before we ship PureScale, we actually do, physical cable pulls where somebody pulls and yanks the machine, the cable out of the machine. And, similar for some switch failures and stuff like that. And given, the current work at home restrictions and, there's less than, well, essentially 2 months left in the, till we plan to have this out the door, we're at the point that people needed to be started to come back to the lab now if we were going to finish those tests in time to ship PureScale at the first half of this year. So PureScale will be shipping its first fixed pack, I would say roughly a couple months after we are allowed to end up back inside the lab. And, it doesn't necessarily need, 100% people inside the lab, but when we're at the point we can start sending a few people in. And, we'll keep people posted on that. So if you're PureScale and are interested when it's coming, feel free to, send me email, and as things change, I can give you the latest updates we have. But, for where our lab is, which is Toronto, Canada, we know for sure that schools are not going back until the end of May. And so and I'm saying guess and extrapolate because none of us know for sure, but our estimate is we're not going to be back in the lab till at least the 1st of June. So, and that can change. Obviously, it's way outside of my control, but if people ask and need updates, you can just send me email. So those are the highlights, and I think I have about 25 minutes to get into the deep dive.
Right. Those highlights have inspired dozens and dozens of questions. I'll have you take that break now.
Yep.
I'll take that back, and let's see. Attendees, staff, me, presenter. Good. Show my screen. Okay. So, quick break while Keri's voice gets a rest. Some upcoming shows you should know about. 14th of May, DB2 ZOS version 9 through version 12, best developer features, and that's with Tony Andrews. And that also has applicability to LUW as well. So look for that. Tony's a great presenter. He's with Themis. May 21, we got a really cool topic on cybersecurity, and that's from a gentleman over in Ireland. 4th of June, IBM replication, data delivery in 2020. That's with IBM Gold consultant Frank Fillmore. And 18th of June, Watson IoT, Tririga Platform and Workflows. That's going to be presented by an IBM champion from Italy. So that's it's fun stuff to check out and register for those things on our. And again, a PDF handout of Keri's presentation will be made available near the end of today's show. And you can also get the replay from the replay blog. And if you haven't joined the IBM community yet, please do so, community.ibm.com. You can get a lot of great information there. Think has gone virtual. It's May 5th and 6th, and it's free. Free is a very good price. There's another event that I'm going to have more information on in the next slide. There's IBM User Group Days that are happening on May 19th and 20th. That's also free. More on that in a second. Let's see, the Db2 console is going to replace DSM. You can get access to that here. IIUG, that's where you find information about Informix events and news. IDUG, the Dallas conference has been postponed and will probably be replaced with something virtual. Stay tuned to IDUG for more information on that. And if you haven't played with it, I think this Watson Studio Auto AI tool is pretty cool. Take a look at that. Virtual User Group Day, May 19th and 20th. You can register again at ibm.biz/usergroupday. Virtual community event, 100% online and free. Keynotes from top executives, 6 tracks per day. 96 hours of content. My head is going to explode. 14 plus user groups participating. This is pretty cool what they've put together. And I am going to be presenting on May 19th. I'm very excited about that speaking opportunity. So get yourselves over to ibm.biz/usergroupday. Check it out and register for this event that IBM is putting on. I have a few polling questions for our good-looking audience. First polling question. Do you have experience working with DB2 Blue column organized tables? So I always like to reach into the IBM community and see how people are using DB2, where the skills are. I did the State of the DB2 Universe study again earlier this year, and that will actually be the subject matter of my presentation during the IBM User Group Days. Going once, going twice, I like to see 80% of the audience vote, or about 30 seconds, whichever comes first. Time's almost up. Closing the poll, and I'm going to share the results with our good-looking audience. 46% said no, 11% less than a year, 43% more a year or more. So that's 55 to 45. Is that in alignment with what you'd expect, Keri?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably similar to other numbers I've seen.
And now we're asking people if they have experience with DB2 HADR.
Not sure why I don't get to vote.
I know. It's not fair. The host and the guest speakers don't get to vote. Only the good-looking people in our worldwide audience get to vote. And of
I'm
course,
just going to let that slide.
Of course, somebody says, what's there's always a smart aleck in every group. But HADR, high availability disaster recovery, that's the magical IBM DB2 technology where your data goes from one database to another. That's what it is. Okay, closing the poll, sharing the results. 16% no, 39% say some experience, 45% claim to be experts, 1% says what is it? Okay.
And now they know what it is.
Now they know what it is. And another fun question, how would you rate your shell scripting skills? What's a shell script? Some experience, code is needed. I'm a shell scripting pro. Give me a GUI or give me death. 4 possible answers. Always having fun. How would you answer this question, Keri, if you could vote?
I script everything.
Script everything. That would answer number 3. You're a pro.
You know, awk, sed, grep.
Okay, going once, going twice, closing the poll. Sharing the results. 62% some experience, 31% are pros, 7% ask for a GUI or give me death. Okay, so that's it for now. The last polling question will come at the end. And it's time to put Keri back on.
I'm hoping it just comes up.
Yeah, I'm good.
By the way, has my sound been good?
I think your sound has been pretty good.
Okay.
I can hear it well.
Okay, because I keep getting messages up saying your audio connection is reconnecting.
Yeah, your phone is flashing a little bit in the controls, but
okay.
You're back on Deep Dive. And I'm going to let questions continue to pile up, and then I'll throw a bunch of questions at you at the end while people download the handout.
Perfect.
We can run a little over if we need to. Thank you.
Okay. So as you saw in the previous two slides, there was 70 plus things that I listed, and probably even more that I didn't list or summarized a bunch of things together. So lots of new function, lots of new performance enhancements. All coming at the first half of this year. And so, how did I get to my top 10 list? So first of all, I'm going to put in a plug for my manager because that's always good to do. Peter will tomorrow actually be doing the DB2 Night Show, and he's going to be talking a lot more about things like REST API, Graph, ML Optimizer, the in-database analytics, containers, Python UTFs. Apparently that sign should actually be a comma. I'll fix that too. I also skipped tech preview items, and I still ran out of room. So, ended up with 10 because as is, I'm going to be short on time. I'll make it a top 8 for next time. So here's the top 10 that I'm going to talk about. So, a big reminder that anything in the next set of slides have not shipped yet. When the next shipped vehicle comes out, you should probably make sure that it really did ship in that vehicle before you try to run any of these or set them up. But first one I'm going to talk about is for security and authentication caching. So the way things work today is when you come in with the connection and you come in with DB2, depending if you set up a plugin for authentication, DB2 basically calls out to something else. And in this example, I show an LDAP server. And if you have, thousands of DB2 clients all running very short connections, each of those new connections re-authenticates. And what that can do is drive a lot of load onto that, whatever the server, the plugin is going to, and that itself can actually, result in delays, for DB2 responding. And what we've done is in between us and whatever we're going really outside the engine, we've added in a cache. So the key things here is we don't cache the credentials. And I'm going to skip to the next page. It's controlled in 2 ways. One is there's how many entries do you want to keep in the cache? So, the more users you have, the higher you would want this, but it also means you're using up more memory. And also a duration. So this ensures that, at some interval, no matter if it's the same user, we will, re-authenticate and ensure that, what the plugin and the, say the LDAP server knows about this user gets, reset up. So if for some reason it changes, we'll notice. So the default for this is off. So 0 users. You can, bump it up for what's realistic for your environment. But we set the default time to be 3 minutes. So after 3 minutes, we will go check again. And this can remove a bottleneck, like I said, especially if you're running thousands of clients and very short connections. There's also a new SQL statement to be able to flush the cache. So if for some reason you really want everybody to re-authenticate now, you can basically flush the cache, and then everybody's going to get sent out to re-authenticate immediately. And we've added getmon DB information to show you how efficient that cache is being.
Keri, Luke would
Yep.
like to know, will flushed authentication cache be executable via admin command?
I will have to check that.
Okay.
I think it's an SQL statement, right? So anything you can run, anywhere you can run an SQL statement, then yes, right? So it's less of a, like I said, it's less a command and more SQL-like.
Okay, that's it for now.
The next one, and I talked about this on the preceding slides, are huge improvements to blue compression algorithms when you have varchars. So currently, if you have varchars, we support two types of compression. The one is prefix compression. So if you have strings that are all part number and then 1, 2, 3 and part number 4, 5, 6, the prefix of part number can be compressed. And also, equal strings can be compressed. So if you have the identical string, 1,000 Smiths in your database, those can be compressed. But what we also have added is a repeating pattern-based compression. It's LZ4 based. It works really well for geospatial data, URLs, comments fields, anywhere where you tend to have patterns or common words or anything repeating, but not at any specific frequency. Generally, when you have these types of fields, you get about 2 to 4 times compression for that fields, but obviously it depends on frequency and pattern lengths. The longer your patterns are and the more frequent they are, the better compression you get. A second one we've added is what we call nibble-based compression. And when this kicks in, you're basically guaranteed 2 times compression for the, any strings that use it. And what this essentially does is a lot of times customers take a varchar field and then go put in a phone number, right? So that the character set within there is incredibly small, but repeating patterns are, not likely, right? So if you happen to have a varchar field, and this is decided on a per page basis, and within that field, there are only 16 unique characters or less. So like the numbers 0 to, 9, a dash, maybe a couple brackets, we will actually get 2 times compression for those columns. And, phone numbers, coordinates, dollar amounts, things that normally might be in numerics or, mostly numeric fields are great examples of where these kick in. These are stored compressed on disk and in the buffer pool, right? So you get the memory savings too when they're sitting in memory. And one of the things I'll want to mention, and this comes up a few times in the presentation, is these are off by default and require a registry variable to enable. And this is done because once you start using these new compression methods, if you were decided you wanted to drop back to the GA level of code, you would get an error when you access these tables saying they use compression methods we don't understand. So it's a user choice of when to enable, and once you do that, you lose the ability to drop back to the previous level of code and access this data. If you look at the performance numbers, there's 2 different numbers I did. Is the first one is this is actually across a bunch of tables, so it's more a whole database number. So in FixPack 4 of 11.1, it was just under it's just 2 gigabytes. In 11.5, it was about 20% smaller, and it's less than half the size compared to 11.1 when we ship it the first half of this year, right? And like I said, this one is across the tables. You get much bigger numbers depending on the amount of varchars you have. And another example, and this one's almost it is less than a third of the size, and it's a case of a very specific table with a lot of varchar data. Where the compression rate, you almost save 2/3 of the size. So, these are highly recommended. You just have to choose when you want to start using them. All new data will go in using these. The existing data will not be changed. The next one I'll talk about, which is also blue, is column or trickle insert. So I mentioned this briefly on the other slide, is we did a lot of enhancements in GA to speed up bulk inserts. This one we are speeding up small inserts into columnar tables, and also it has two side effects. One, it also reduces memory footprint because we're caching less directly in memory, and it decreases the size of some very small tables. So what happens today if you were to insert in columnar and you were to do one row insert into a table with, say, 100 columns, you would actually take that one row and it gets split across 100 different pages, right? So you're actually fixing 100 different pages, you're putting 100 different single rows in, and you're doing your commit. What we support now, and it's turned on by this DB2 call insert groups, is the ability to temporarily take that row and store it. It's still in columnar format, but it is stored across less pages, right? And we decide how many less is, and that really depends on how wide your row really is. So we take that single row, and rather than breaking it into 100, say 100 different pages, in this example that I'm showing on here, it got broken into 2 different pages, right? And within those pages, the one page gets all of column 1, all of 0, 1, and 2, and the other page gets all of columns, 4 and 5. And like I said, we decide whether it should break into, 2 pages, or in some cases, if you have a small number of columns and a lot of ints, it may even go into 1 page. If you have a very wide table, it still might go into, say, tens of pages, but probably not the hundreds like you're seeing today. So this is used when data is trickling in. And a key part is, like I said, it's still a columnar format. We're just packing them more together. And this reuses code that we already have internally, because we store both a column and the nullability of that column together on the same page, where they are technically separate column groups. So it's, like I said, reusing something that already exists. And another key point to say is, when we're putting it in this format, it does not get compressed, right? So this is the get it in there quick, and we will repack it, similar to some of the grooming and some of the page compression we do, I'll say shortly.
James would like to know if you'll be speaking about compression and RAM usage of code units 32 varchars.
No, and I think Fred, if you have questions, email me what they specifically are.
Okay.
Given I have about 7 minutes and many slides to go. So as I said, they're going to get put into these column groups, and then the goal is they don't stay in this format for very long. We really just want enough of them that we can then split them out to full, basically full pages when they're at the per column level, right? And, so unless you have an incredibly small table that never hits the point of splitting it out even once, then, these insert group pages are essentially temporary. And what happens is, when we hit that threshold saying we think that when we go to the effort to split them out, we can start to fill full pages, we basically synchronously within that transaction go split them out. And that's very similar to how we do page compression, where you fill page 1, you fill page 2, and then we go, oh, let's try to compress them together as much as we can, and synchronously shuffle the rows around for best compression. So, what we expect to see is a large speed up for the performance for small trickle inserts. Another one that we added, and this is something we've had for row for a long time, is a RID scalar function, or a TSN scalar function that is now supported both for columnar and for DPF, both on row and columnar. If you're running on DPF, you should use DB partition number. Otherwise, you will not get a unique number. You will get something that, you potentially get a TSN that exists on, or a RID that exists on multiple DB2 members. And what this allows you to do, and you can try the sample yourself, is take a columnar table. When you have a lock name from something like a getmon locks or a format lock, You can then use it to figure out, map it to a TSN, and then use that TSN to figure out exactly what that row is. You know, it can be useful for debugging, or it can be useful for, we also use it internally for some of our own tooling. The next one I'll mention is optimizer version control. So what this allows is DBA to quickly revert the optimized behavior in terms of query rewrite and transformations, and also access plan generations to match a previous release or version. This is a single control that will quickly, and you know, the intent is for emergency situations, though, you know, I suspect some customers may use proactively, to basically say, I would like, you know, the optimizer to use the similar optimizations that it used in the past. Prior to this, you know, you might have, if you were trying to, you know, work on a, you know, a situation where a query went bad, you might have got a list of here's 5 things or 10 things or 15 things to set. This now has it as a single setting. The new registry variable is called Db2 optimizer version. The default is always the current version. So our goal is to give you all the best optimizations we have at the time. It can be set to any 4-part name since 10.5.0.0, so 10.5 GA. So if you want to match 11.5 GA, you'd set it to 11.5.0.0. If you set it on DB2 set to an invalid level, it will tell you. I just want to be clear, this does not prevent plan changes due to changes in statistics or any other non-optimizer code changes. So, you know, if you run stats, even if you keep it at the same level, you know, you will be getting new plans based on what those run stats show. The other thing to mention is this is applied first, and then if you have any other individual SQL compiler registry variable set, those will override this. So this gives you that base starting point to be like, say, 11.5 GA, but then you can still override individually. Another one that we're adding, and this really focuses at simplicity and, you know, making I'll say a DBA's life easier, is the ability to prevent a user from accidentally running an alter table statement that would put the table into reorg pending state. And, you know, there's a number of operations that can do that, like drop columns, you know, setting and unsetting the nullability. And with this one, there's a new register variable. The default is off, but you can choose to set it to on. And if you set it to on, then if somebody runs an alter table statement that would want to put the table into reorg pending state, you're going to get the SQL 270 and a reason code 129 saying, you know, this operation isn't allowed because it would do that. And this is to prevent some user from accidentally running something at the wrong time and, you know, having the table go into reorg pending state, because at that point, you know, there's limited table scan type access you can have to it, but you lose update access and also the ability to use the indexing for scans. I also mentioned that one's dynamic, so you can, you know, turn it on and off if there's periods you want people to let in to do that. The next one is a faster database startup. I mentioned this earlier, but, you know, on Linux, it's up to 120 times faster, and on AIX, up to about 43 times faster. The bigger your buffer pools are, and the bigger your lock lists are, the faster that is going to be. And, you know, what we do now is we actually delay some of the memory commit into the background, and, you know, you're going to start using the memory as it's available. But because we do it in the background, in most cases, by the time you come in with your next set of work to do, it's already going to be done. So huge startup time improvements. Next one, the simplicity for adaptive WLM. So for anybody who's worked with DB2 Warehouse, we shipped the adaptive WLM at least a couple of years ago, if not more. And what we're doing here, and I'm going to skip the details of it, but the key parts is we will actually be, you know, if you take a look at WLM today, it looks at estimates. A key part of this is actually taking feedback based on actuals and readjusting things. And it also, by default, sets up a lot more lanes based on, you know, the estimates, and then lets certain numbers of things in based on, you know, are they small things that you should just come in and run quickly, or are they on the larger end, at which point you should let less of them in and, you know, allow the balance across the system. As I said, this has been in DB2 Warehouse for a while. There's actually new enhancements coming to it, on a frequent basis. For at the end of this half, what we're actually doing is we'll be supporting it in, the 11.5 on-prem, and it will first be available to customers who are using DB2 Workload Analytics. In some future stage, with the exact time frame not yet defined, but it will probably appear on the roadmap in the future, is having it to be used by all customers, even if you aren't running workload analytics and are, say, primarily row-based warehousing, or even running it in a more OLTP config. Moving to it, you actually have to opt in. It's not the default behavior like it is in DB2 Warehouse. And our documentation will show you the procedures of how to turn it on if you'd like to run it once we ship the next mod pack. Advanced log space management. I know if anybody's been at iDugs, or I believe Mike Roken has been on maybe the Night Show and maybe the DataView Show. He's gone over this, from the tech preview point of view. It's going to be shipping as GA. And the whole concept here is minimize the number of times that a user might get a log full, especially in the case of someone starting a transaction that logs very little, but is held open for a very long time. And whether that is they do an insert and then they're running some long select, or whether they, did an insert and then went off for lunch. What we will do is, for that transaction, because it's logging very little, but it's holding up a very large amount of log space, we will pull that transaction out into a separate transaction, or what we call an extraction log. And that means we have all the information we need for, redo and undo in cases of crash recovery, or any rollback scenario, and allow those other logs, so those yellow ones, to be freed up from being part of the active log. So now, rather than in this case having 3 full logs that we are holding up, you'll just have the small transaction log of just the one in-flight operation. This also has the side effect that things like crash recovery and rollback can be faster, because you don't have to go find the couple log records throughout those 3 files. They're actually together in a single file. I believe this is the last of my 10, which is good because I'm already 2 minutes over. Spatial analytics. So if you were using the spatial extenders, they are row-based, and we have added spatial analytics, which support both row and columnar organized tables. A lot of similar functionality. There are some differences, and this was a tech preview in 11.5 GA. I'm going to skip this slide and go to the simpler chart, but they both process within the database. The new spatial analytics support column store and row store. Currently, spatial extenders support, say, spatial grid type indexing. For spatial analytics, we are working on what we would like for indexing or filters, so more coming in the future. They all support a large number of functions, custom coordinate systems, different spatial reference systems, and they have a maximum safe of size of 4 megabytes. So, these are stored in lob type structures, but they can also be inlined if you have much smaller sizes. The last slide I have is to talk about what is the support matrix for various platforms for non-pure scale. Pure scale is similar, but I left it out because, as I said, it won't be shipping at the end of the first half. 2 things I'd like to point out on this. So number 1 is I want to point out all the new additions that are being added. So, RHEL 8 support, SLES 15, Windows 2019, and also Catalina support on Mac OS. But the other thing I want to point out is one of the things that is also happening is some of the minimum levels are being bumped up. So any of the ones that are, I marked as red in the 11.5 GA, for 11.5, what's shipping at the first half of this year, the minimum levels will be increasing, by, the point release level. So, 7.5 is, most of these are things that are either already out of support or going out of support in the next 3 months. So things like RHEL 7.5, the minimum is going to be 7.6. Similar for CentOS, Similar for Yosemite and the SLES 12 SP3, bumping up to the minimum level of SP4. So, the key here is trying to ensure, customers are starting off, with a lot of people starting to go up to 11.5 on levels that, they're going to be staying supported on for multiple years, and not starting on things already out of support or very, very soon out of support. Last one, if you want to know more details, follow the public roadmaps, add to the ideas and portals. As I said, Peter's on the DB2 Night Show tomorrow, so that's my unscrupulous plug for my manager. And Scott already mentioned this, but the IBM Think 2020 is now a free digital experience. Go take a look, sign up for the sessions you're interested in. I think we all hope next year it's back to a physical thing, and the world is a little back to what we're used to as normal. So, take this opportunity while it's all 100% free, and go see what it is. And I mean, I think the keynote for anybody who knows who will.i.am is and the Black Eyed Peas and, all of that, there's going to be definitely some interesting things that are available to go watch. So highly recommend it. Credits, anybody and everyone, I'm more than willing to steal and borrow slides from everyone. And, thanks to the team, who's putting all this work in. And especially, like I said, if everybody working at home, it's a unusual experience compared to the last 28 years of my job. And special thanks to Scott for running the DataView Show and giving me this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, Keri.
And I'd say at Q&A, and I'm guessing there's a lot of them, and I'm guessing we won't have time for them all, but maybe if you can cut and paste some of them, because I don't know how to see them.
Right. I'm gonna shout them out to you. You're getting lots of compliments. A lot of people are very happy with this.
I hope everybody is excited about 11.5, because like I said, it is what's coming, because it is very large, and like I said, it's been a year in the making.
Is that block reorg pending deserves a drum roll, right? So people that.
I will pass that on to Jeff. He will be very happy.
All right. On slide 21, it mentions customer-like data. What industry was the customer-like data modeled after?
So one of them was financial data, and I'm trying to remember who the other. I think the first one might have. I'm trying to remember who it was. I'm trying to remember who it was. Do you remember what industry they're in? I think the first one was either insurance or retail, because I don't remember which of the two customers' data I pulled.
Why?
And like I said, the second one is explicitly financial. I know that for sure. I put that in the slide.
All right. Why is there a split being done with only fixes and functions, and which ones should we upgrade to? Jason wants to know.
So that split is probably being done for two reasons. So in the bottom container stream, we are continually pulling from what is our latest development stream. So it is always getting the new fixes, or sorry, the new function. The top stream, I would actually say, is existing because we're trying to keep it closer to what we have done in the past for on-prem customers and for traditional installs where, we had the iFixes in between, right? So that you could get fixes only, in what is that, I'll say, hopefully 6 months, but say 6 to 12 month time frame. And, part of that, is even from our end to try to reduce, the number of special builds people ask for by having, like I said, a number of the key fixes packaged together, and having people being able to grab that versus having to wait, the 6 to however many months for the next mod pack.
That's a good quality long answer. You might have covered this on a previous slide. What is the latest 11.5 available on Linux, RHEL 7.10, multi-platform, not containerized? Ram wants to know.
So if taking I think that you said 7.1. So the answer will be, if you're on RHEL, you should be moving up to at least 7.6.
7.6.
Right, because GA supported 7.5 and forward, and the next mod is going to support 7.6 and forward. And I don't even know how long Red Hat 7.1 has been out of support, but it's probably been a while.
Abrar wants to know, are there any planned enhancements to DeckelGen? DC?
Yeah, I was going to say 7.1 has been ended of support since 2017. So, my answer is move up. Sorry, what was the question?
Any planned enhancements to DeckelGen? DCLGEN. It's that utility that generates structures for COBOL.
I'm going to answer not that I know, but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
Okay. What about 64K or 128K page size? Will they ever come?
So right now there's no plan for that, and I'd like to understand what they're running that and why they want it.
Okay. Well,
so
David,
right.
Let's find another good question for you.
Right. I mean, on the OLTP side, definitely no, and on the warehousing side, we tend to do larger block IO, so that we can keep smaller pages for caching reasons, but get IO benefits from prefetch size and IO size type configuration parameters.
Mm-hmm. Joe wants to know if there's any plan to incorporate REST API in a future LUW releases.
So as I said, it's actually one of the things that is targeted for the first half of this year, and it's one that Peter will be talking about tomorrow in more detail. So it was on the large list of 2-page of enhancements for first half.
Sri would like to know, a lot of other RDMS technologies have the ability to perform a delete on a join. Is IBM considering doing that too? DB2 has a lot of good features, but it seems to take back seat due to not having a few features that other databases have given them an edge. Ooh, delete on join.
So that one, I know Z supports. There is actually an AHA idea for it. And I think it's got a handful of votes, but not a huge number. So that's a great example of, if a lot of people are interested in it, go and get more votes for it. Because we do very much look for, for a number of the items when we're trying to figure out what to pull into plan. We do look at the votes. So I will pitch going into the AHA ideas and voting for that one.
Tom would like.
I would say let me be clear. It's actually delete on reorg, right? And if I'm wrong about what you're asking for, then feel free to email me. But the request I see is delete on a ability to do a reorg and do delete out of it. So if you're actually looking for a join across what's essentially a view, that one I don't know if there's an RFE for.
All right. Tom would like to know, is the trickle insert similar to ingest?
So the trickle insert I would describe as the back end, and if whether you do it as insert or small ingest with commit, I believe it would kick in for both. Although the majority of people who do ingest are actually doing bulk, right? So normally for ingest, it's like Gen 2 of import, right? At which point I would argue external tables is Gen 3 of import, right? Where you're giving it a large input file, whether it's a CSV or a load from cursor or from a cursor. So, I would say it uses the back end and probably not on ingest, import, or ET, because they're more likely to go down the bulk insert path.
All right. I did the polling question, and 99% of our very good-looking stay-at-home audience learned something from you today. 1% must have been your coworkers, perhaps. Everybody is still here. Hundreds of people from around the world joined us today. Awesome. Thank you for being here. Audiences make these presentations all the more worthwhile and gratifying. Thank you, Keri, for being our guest. and for all the work that you do for DB2. It's super awesome. Need to thank our sponsors. The IBM community has made the DataView Show possible. And remember, there's that user group event that you want to look for. I might put a link to that in the replay blog. And speaking of the replay blog, you're going to find show news and replays at dataviewshow.com. I'm going to continue with a few more questions for you. Are there any new features for the machine learning optimizer? Joachim asks.
Right. So again, that's a good one to go to, Peter, tomorrow. Like I said, the machine learning optimizer will be a tech preview again. And the focus of it, Peter will go into a lot more detail, but, it's focusing on improving cardinality estimates, which will then feed into the optimizer for better plans. And, there's ongoing, so I'll say plans and strategies to start using for, join ordering and many other opportunities as we're going forward. But if you go tomorrow, I think Peter will talk about, and I think he may have a demo of it. I can't remember. He's got 2 demos, and I can't remember. I think they're Graph and maybe REST API. I don't remember. He had one for Machine Learning Optimizer.
All right. David wants to know, admin move table proc moves object type data index long, even when they are already in the destination table space. Will it change soon to avoid unnecessary processing?
I'd have to understand what the unnecessary processing is to that you're thinking of. So maybe send me that one in email.
Okay,
with a bit more detail.
We'll have David do that. Let's see. James would like me to tell you that this was excellent, and he really appreciates your presentation. Doreen,
thank you.
Thanks us for the handout. And can she help diagnose an SQL 0903 return code 5? Lots of laughs. James is a very funny man. And let's see.
I'm glad the community's having fun.
Yes. Matthias wants to know, what is the link for downloading the handout? Right in the GoToWebinar tool, there should be a thing that offers you handouts. And if you look at the GoToWebinar tool, you can download it right from today's GoToWebinar session. I'll also put a link in the replay blog. So thanks for that, Matthias. And do I need DBA permission to install 11.5 from Rajesh?
So I'd argue it's not DBA, right? You can potentially, depending on what your install is, you might need root on the box.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's not technically DBA because you don't really have any of that set up yet till you actually have DB2 installed and running.
Yeah, you got to be an admin or something like that.
Right. You need OS level permissions, not DB2 level permissions.
Oops, lost my place in the questions. There's so many. Abrar thanks us for today's show. Matthias says he got the download. And can an existing blue table be analyzed to determine if compression can be improved like row tables? If so, is reorg-like process supported? That's from Scott. So
there is a tool, and the name's eluding me right now. It's actually based off of a mid-move table to estimate what the compression rate would be. And then right now, your option is probably more in a mid-move table type, to utilize it for reorg. It is something that we're working on in the future to have other options. And if you're running that, I would make sure that you've moved up to the latest level once it's available, and set the reg vars that allow you to get the latest var chart compression enhancements before you run that.
Did you have fun being a guest on our show today, Keri?
Of course.
Oh,
There's always fun banter.
very, very.
I mean, to be honest, when I present, like I told you earlier, when you said, let me know when it's a good time, I'm like, I just kind of start presenting, and, especially on a WebEx, it's kind of more like I get in the zone, and if anything, get yelled at by people to slow down.
Right.
Right. Presenting in person is totally different, right? I try to engage with the audience and especially bug people who might look like they're sleeping in the front row, but it's a very different style on a WebEx.
Oh, yes, it is. Some people use stuffed animals or stuffed dolls around their computer, so if they feel like they have an audience. Yeah,
but I hate when my audience has this really blank look, like they don't know what I'm talking about, and it worries me. So I don't have any smart-looking stuffed animals who look, engaged and understanding.
How about we invite you back this fall in season 2 of the DataView Show, and you can do some more deep dives on your favorite DB2 things. Would you like that?
Perfect.
I think our audience would love you to tears for that.
I think that's great, and we'll figure out a time. And like I said, I'm also hoping there starts to be more in-person, iDugs and community things by that time frame too. So.
Yeah, it'll be nice when we can actually see people and shake hands again. I'm looking forward to that. But though I badly need a haircut.
Yeah, there's a reason I'm not on video. But before Scott and I digress too much, I'd like to thank everyone for showing up. I'm guessing the majority of the people on the call, probably some people on the team, so always thanks to them for everything they do. But also, a lot of DB2 customers in the wider community, and thank you for coming and listening. And I hope you're all excited about what's coming soon.
All right, and with that, we're gonna tee up the show music and advise everybody to stay home, stay safe, eat good food, remember to exercise. Check Keri's Twitter feed for fun things to do and delicious food and gardening tips. And that's it. Keri, thanks again for being here.
Yep, thanks for inviting me, Scott.
You're welcome.